Maybe we can wait for just 2 more minutes before getting started, right? Maybe I think people. Okay, so thank you all for joining and welcome to 23rd session of SAIMA. And today we will be discussing taking the leap from developer to architect. And we have got two wonderful people from our community today, that is Allison Park and Ankit. So I would like to welcome both of them to this session. And Allison, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I'm Allison Park. I am a certified principal architect, enterprise architect at Salesforce. Just to give a little bit more background on what that means is enterprise architects work with businesses. I'm actually in a pre-sales role, and we help our customers understand business architecture and help articulating that, and then relating that to technical architecture and pull it all together with business value.
That's really
And
great to hear. Yeah.
yeah, Meera,
Go
do you want
ahead.
me to go a little bit into my story of kind of how I went from developer to architect?
Definitely. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, great. So I actually kind of didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I got a chance to do a lot of crazy different jobs in marketing and sales. But I started to realize as I started my career that I really enjoyed working with computers, and it never occurred to me to be a developer. And I was lucky enough to work at a small company, and they
Okay.
had an opening for a developer, and I literally raised my hand and said, I'll do it. It was a fairly obscure language called R Basic, which actually was developed by the US Defense Department, of all things. And I learned trial by fire how to develop in R Basic using the manuals and the people around me, and found I really enjoyed it. I loved the puzzle solving, but I also loved the way that I had a chance to really kind of bring efficiency to the business. And from there, I learned to develop on the AS400. I'm showing my age as I talk about that. Um, and as I was growing up through that as a developer and learning new languages and moving forward, I found I also enjoyed working with the business and understanding what they needed and how those technical pieces came into play. So I actually went the route from developer to manager, managing the development team and then the whole IT team on technology, and was basically a VP of information technology. And then when I met Salesforce in about 2010, I also at that same time learned about what an enterprise architect was, and that idea of really kind of planning everything out for the business, both the business architecture and the technical architecture, and bringing those together. My background as a developer and then my passion for learning from the business really kind of came together. And I went into consulting to really kind of build my muscles around working with businesses, lots of different businesses, and business process reengineering, and as well bringing different technologies together for them. And then as I was on that journey and focusing more and more, I focused on Salesforce. And then I was a rad woman. I learned more development on the Salesforce platform through Rad Women. I did both 1 and 2, and then joined Ladies Be Architects in about November of 2017. And I was actually wasn't quite ready to admit that I could be an architect, and Ladies Be Architects really got me connected with a lot of like-minded women, and kind of grew from there. And as luck would have it, in about 2019, about 2 years later, Salesforce reached out to me and said, "Hey, you look to us like an enterprise architect." And I said, that sounds great, and interviewed and got the job, and started right before the pandemic in January 2020, but have been doing enterprise architecture here at Salesforce in a pre-sales role, getting the chance to work directly with business leaders as well as IT leaders at many, many companies through the sales process and really kind of set up, hey, this is what your business architecture is like. We take them through an enterprise architecture methodology that we have to keep things lightweight. And then also that technical architecture, really with the goal of being a trusted advisor to customers so that when they make that investment in Salesforce, they feel confident. And I think that's really at the core of what an architect is really being that trusted advisor and having that experience to draw on. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's like really great to know, Alison. Like, getting started your journey as a developer, even I guess like in the early probably 90s or 20s, I guess. Yeah.
The early. I think I got started as a developer in 1995. Yeah,
Oh.
1995, and then lots of learning on the job as a developer. I think we probably all can relate to that.
That's really great. I cannot even imagine like the level of experience you have gained throughout this journey. That's really great to know. We have a lot to talk about your experience, so I would like to quickly move to Ankit to get an introduction from Ankit.
Hi, my name is Ankit. I'm originally from India, but I moved to Germany. So I work as a freelance technical architect. And I didn't know if I have to tell my story. So I work as a freelance Salesforce technical architect. I started as a developer in 2012. And then slowly over the years, I moved into more like a consultant role. And since 2015, I've been freelancing in Berlin. And I have worked with from broad variety of clients like public limited companies such as Coca-Cola, eBay, Germany. Then I had a startup phase where I was just working with startups. And now I found my home at SMBs. I think SMBs is a good balance where it's not that like urgent, but you're also not lost in like a public limited company where you are one of too many and it's hard to judge your impact. Nothing against that. It's a good place to work. It has a very safe workspace. So I work and currently I'm working for a client in Hamburg and they are car rental aggregators. So if you are renting a car somewhere in the world, there's a good chance that you are working through them. My story, I'm originally from India. I have a IT background, not because it provides a lot of employment in India, but I just loved computer science since I was a kid. I always wanted to be a scientist, so I moved to Germany to be a scientist. But while pursuing my PhD, my friends said, don't do it, it's not worth it. Because that's a different story, but I stopped my PhD, somehow landed into the Salesforce world. And since then, I'm here for the last 12, 13 years. I don't know. I just keep losing the count. I don't know. At some point, after 10, you stop counting. It's like, yeah, okay. You've been there, done that. That's about it. And I'm happy to share my journey from how I made that leap from being a developer to now being an architect, and hopefully you folks can sort of learn something from it or get something from it.
That's really great to know, Ankit. So you started your career as a developer in Salesforce platform itself, or it was some other technology?
No, I started basically in Java or Python. I basically started as a researcher and I was mostly doing C++. So I started in C++, so to say, and then I moved slightly to Java and then very fast to Apex.
Okay, good to know. So, probably I will do a quick introduction of myself. So, I'm Meera Nair and I am from India. I am also leading Trivandrum Architect Community Group. And I started my IT profession in 2006 after completing my degree. So I joined my current company through campus placement. That's how I got started, and I got trained in Java. I was in Java for almost 2 years. Then I got an opportunity to get trained in Salesforce. That's the moment I moved to Salesforce, and I started my career as a Salesforce developer. That time, like, there was no Visualforce, no Lightning Web Component. It was just Apex and probably S Control, but I didn't get my chance to working S Control, but heavily customized using Apex only. So that's how I got started. Then I moved to a consultant role for like 1 year or 2 years of time. Then I realized, like, my passion is not with consulting. Probably I should go back to development, and I should build my career there. So that's how I again moved back to development role. And from there, I slowly started to, move to a dev lead role. So it was a gradual, slow journey from developer to architect. So probably we can discuss more details when we are uh, moving forward. Just I want to cover some our group related details, so that if any of you would like to engage with us in any way, we would love to welcome all of you. So basically, we are supporting everyone in the community who are preparing for the technical architect certification. Not just for technical architect certification, like this session, like if you are looking to move your career from developer path to architect path, we are trying to arrange some sessions. We are trying to bring expert like Allison and Ankit in our meetings, and we are trying to share their knowledge so that people will be able to learn from that. And again, we are not an official Salesforce group, so it's all the content is based on our personal opinion only. And during the discussion, it would be helpful if participant can mute yourself, and any questions you can share through the chat, and later towards the end of the call, we'll be taking those questions. So yeah, that's it. I guess we can continue with the discussion. I'm stopping sharing because this is going to be a discussion actually. So it was really great to hear about your journey from a high level. But I would like to know, like, how your developer career was. Like, when I get started, I was like, it was like, we will be getting all the details from the architect. We just had to implement something. From there, I guess there is a great change, like how developers are working nowadays. So based on your experience, what is the specific role of a developer in current projects, and what changes you have seen from your when you started your career as a developer to till this time? That's what I would like to hear. Allison, probably would you like to go first?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I started in the mid 90s as a developer. We called ourselves programmers back then.
Okay.
But same idea. You're using code to solve problems. One of the things that I think is interesting is that kind of the emergence of Agile. When I started out, we didn't have words for practicing Agile or that approach. It was very much, and it was at a small company as well. So having a small team, you could kind of keep track of everything, and you would verbally keep track of things. There wasn't as much structure. But I do remember very vividly, I think one of the first times that I promoted something into production, and the way it was written in RBasic, I had put in a comma, and the comma in RBasic articulated that the field I was updating basically blanked out the whole record and updated only with that piece of information. So I did a good job in testing, and I knew how many records I was going to be changing, and I'd actually had basically a list of the keys of the files that are of the records that it was going to be changing. And so I promoted it to production, and it was on a Friday, and I was actually taking an Oracle SQL class the next morning, and my boss reached out to me and said, "Hey, how many records did you change?" And I can't remember the exact number, but it was something in the tens of thousands of records, I said very, very proudly. And he explained to me, he realized what the issue was. He had reviewed my code, but he didn't catch it. What the issue was, that basically deleted out the row of information, replacing it only with the updated value that I wanted. And I just felt sick right away. And he restored from backup, and he said, "You come in, you figure out how we clean up just the records that got changed." And so I came in, and we got it all figured out and all cleaned up, and everything was fine. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, that happened. And we need to like tell everybody. And he said, no, you cleaned it up. That's part of the responsibility. And I will tell you, I have shared that kind of, oh my gosh, I messed up mistake with folks I mentor, because that testing process and being super careful, you're going to make mistakes. That's just a fact of the job. And have a way to roll back, have a way to fix the problem. So it was a rough lesson. We didn't have as many tools as we have today. The systems weren't as friendly as they are today. And now, working as a developer or managing developers, especially when I was in consulting, we're obviously using Agile. You're not making, you have a release, it goes through a lot more testing processes than it did back then. But I did value, having those kinds of things happen in the past was great experience to understand, like, why is it that we do the amount of testing that we do and not work right in production, and really kind of trying to share that information of, if you only come up through Agile, you might not understand why it works the way it does, and why having sandboxes are so important. So as a developer, I think those are the biggest changes I've seen, is just we've gotten so much. I mean, obviously systems have changed greatly in that time, but we've just gotten so much more advanced at making sure that we do no harm when we make our changes, if we follow proper application lifecycle management.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Agile has bring a lot of changes to how we are executing a project. And it's good to hear that you had a backup actually, so that they were able to fix the issue in production. Yeah. So even I'm able to recollect like how we used to work when we got started, because everything was waterfall. Like probably a release will be happening in 4-5 months of time. And 1 month probably they'll be taking to fix or finalize the business requirement specification. Then there was 1 month for like system requirement specification. Then only that requirement used to come to us developers. Like we will start to look at developers, and half of the solution might be there already in the system's specification requirement documentation. And we will be starting with the technical design specification. That was the process we used to follow during that period. And I remember in 2008, 2009 and all, in a single release, which was taking up to 4-5 months of time, we used to write a single Apex class. That was the maximum customization we used to do. Everything else was like configuration only. From there, like now it is like people are using 100 lines of code minimum per day. And that is the level of customization each organization or each environment is having. So good to hear your experience, Allison. And Ankit, I would like to hear your experience of seeing like how the system has been changed for developers from the past to till this time.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that is like the role, what I think is like back in 2011, 2012, when I started, there was a very specific role of admin and developer. Like you were an admin or you were a developer, and admin was doing like, they were like admin certifications. I think it was called 201 or something, if I'm not wrong. The developer one was called 401 and 501. Like
401 and 501. Yeah, that's correct.
Admin one was 201 and 301. And actually, so you can see admin role came before the developer role, and the roles were very separate. And, like the admin was supposed to do more like the point and click stuff, or declarative, as we now today call it, like creating fields and, doing workflows. I don't think we had anything more than workflows back then, no process builder, no something like that. And the developer was doing more the code work. And what I've seen over the years is these both two roles are merging. Like today, if you are an you're not an admin, you're either an admin consultant where you're helping the client and you can also do some configuration, or you are a developer admin kind of where you also need to create the fields. Like you'll not create a ticket for someone and wait 4 hours before they created the custom object so you can go ahead and do your job. That's not how it works. So that roles have kind of changed, I think. And the other way, I would agree. Like I come from a very C++ background, and I was like, programming is about writing code and this declarative stuff. So when process builders and all these came out, I was also young and naive. Not that I'm not right now, but back then, like I was like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was more young and naive. So I was like, no, these process builders, no, code is best. And because with code, you have control over everything. I mean, let's be honest, flows and everything is there, and we agree. And the testing for flows is coming. I don't want to get into that discussion. That's not what we're here for. But I'm like, I want control. So I was not a big fan of that. But over the time, I have learned, like just in everything in life, change is inevitable. And that's where the whole industry is going. It's not just like Salesforce is moving. Every technology today, you can pretty much fire up a website or a web app with just point and clicks. Like there are serviceless functions for everything. You don't need to write code pretty much if you want to just get a basic MVP up and running today. Also with database and everything, like if you look at other services available on the internet from Amazon, Firebase, Google, Microsoft, also from Salesforce, like, you really don't need. So over the years, I think the role has developed into something where, as Allison said previously, you were called programmers. And I also used to introduce myself as a gelernter Programmierer, which means an educated programmer or a learned programmer. As if you go to university, like it's a very German term I'm using, and now you are still a developer if you can write good flows with tests. I'm very important for me. Please write. You can write all the flows you want. I have nothing against it, but please write tests for it. And if you don't know how to write tests for it, write me and I'll show you how to write tests for it. So over the years, I think that has changed. And I think over the years, I think this admin role is kind of blurring. So if you are a business analyst or a consultant and you are client facing, you should be able to know the system, and you should be able to do some configurations yourself. But as a developer now, you should know how to create fields. Like it's not like any rocket science. It was never a rocket science, but it was like those roles were split. So I think that's what I've seen right now. And I wouldn't say, I would also say one more thing, that the developers today have it easy because everything in Apex that can be done and can be blogged about, there are hundreds of blogs about it. So I don't think there's any corner of Apex left which has not been blogged about or talked about, like Stack Overflow, or go to any of those famous blogs from people, from Jeff Douglas or any of those. And back in 2012, 2013, the fun part was you hit some roadblocks where there was no answer, and then you had to figure out the answer, and then you wanted to blog about it because everybody wanted to be famous, or still do. But so back then that was the thing. But today, I think also Salesforce support has got massively better. So if you have any problem, yeah. Also back then, as a developer, there was no CI, there was no CD, there was no DevOps. Like chain sets were the king. You had this Maven's Mate, which was supposed to like a code editor, with which you can pretty much deploy. That was like the first metadata deployer with Ant built in, and you could play games in that. I'm forgetting the name of the guy who made Maven's, and yeah. So that's how I think the role of developer has changed. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's correct. I was able to recollect so many things when you started to explain the details, because I remember when we started, there were three different teams actually. One, like you mentioned, it was the admin team. Then there was a configurators team. Third one was the developers team. So we had three categories of team for implementation purpose. And yeah, there was no CI/CD. I remember initial time we used to do all the deployments using Eclipse actually. All the code we used to do deploy through Eclipse. After
Yeah.
that, I think, yeah. After that, we moved to Ant deployment probably. Then because that time there was no chain set.
Yeah. Sorry,
Those,
there were chain sets. I think there was no SFDX.
SFTX, yeah, very recent only, right? Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So that was a good recollection of all the memories, like how we got started and all. So now I would like to hear like your roles and responsibilities as an architect.
Mhm.
Like what are the responsibility you handle in your day-to-day life? And on top of that, I would like to also know like what are the skills required to maintain or sustain in that particular role.
Okay. Who should start?
Uh, Anyone could start. Like Ankit, if you would like to go first, please go ahead.
Sure. So I work as a freelance architect, as I said, and basically the clients hire me to take care of a team of people. So I'm currently or I work as a one-stop shop, which is basically like for my current client, which is a smaller client, they have around 50 licenses. I am like a Swiss Army knife. So I'm the developer, I'm their programmer, I'm their architect, I'm their everything, where you can provide those full holistic services. So whatever requirement they have, they need a new feature, they need new auto response. Like right now, we are implementing surveys after cases. So, classic, when a case is resolved, the customer gets a survey. So I am doing the whole thing, right from creating fields to executing everything. But at my previous project, which I just finished before summer or in summer, I was working as an architect and I was leading a team of 9 people, more or less. And I wouldn't call them admins and developers. I would call them analysts and developers. That was how I saw it.
Mm.
And basically, some of the analysts were client facing and some of the developers were client facing. And by client, I mean stakeholders. But my basic job as the architect was to make sure whatever we have to have this holistic 360-degree view of this big org, so that I know where are all the moving pieces puzzles. So this is a team of 9 people, and let's say they're working in 2 pairs. So there are 4 features being developed in parallel at all time. Also the analysts with the point and click, they're developing something with the flow. Somebody might be writing a class which might clash with that. So your job as an architect is to make sure that the system is running good and leading those people. So when we had a estimation meeting where we had the tickets and we are in a group and we are estimating, and your job is basically you bring your experience on the table, what you've gained in the last 10 to 12 years. That's why I also personally believe if you are in the Salesforce ecosystem for 3 to 5 years, sorry to bust your bubble, it's not ready for the architect. It's a good thing to aspire to, but you need that experience. Architect doesn't mean just the certificate, it's also the experience that you need to bring with it. So my client pays me basically to ensure that all these 9 people don't face a problem. When we do the estimation, people bring in their solutions. How are they going to solve this particular problem? And my job is to kind of have that back and forth with them and give them the possible solution, and also provide that foresight. If I know that after 2 or 3 iterations, something will break because I've seen it somewhere else, to bring that foresight to the team. So your job, you can also be called as a subject matter expert for that matter.
Yeah.
So you work as an SME, you work as also like a mentor to all these 9 people, because some of them were relatively new and they are like having their first steps. So you also kind of mentor them and shepherd them to kind of show the ropes of it. Again, as architect, your most important thing is to have best practices. Thank you, Apex PMD. So you want to ensure that you're following best practices, like writing test for flows. The flows are not getting bigger, like not getting crazy with, I don't know, you need a 46-inch screen to view a flow, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that was basically my role. My role was less client, and by client I mean stakeholders, which is basically sales, service, marketing, like classic, these 3 departments. So I was not interacting with them, but my team was interacting with them. And you have to kind of enable them to have those kind of discussions with the sales team, and not like, oh, they want something and they're like, let me ask my boss and get back to you. So not like that. Like you have to enable them to make those decisions, then come in with us and discuss it with you and solve it. So it's a combination of being a team lead, manager, subject matter expert, mentor, I would say. Yeah, that's how I would describe as an architect. I'm thinking of other example. I also, so this is like an in-house role, you can say. If you move it to consulting, this is pretty much the same, where you work as an architect and you're working for multiple clients for a consulting company, and your job is to ensure all these projects are running smooth. And I did make an app for an ISV. I cannot mention it, and there basically I laid down the architecture for the app, how it should look like, what the data structure, what everything should look like. And then I went out, and then somebody made the app, and then I came back in to just ensure that everything that I had put it on the plan, was it done like that, do the testing and stuff like that. So the role can vary depending upon what the current requirement is. But in a nutshell, it's basically your experience with Salesforce and having that foresight to see, okay, where this thing will be in the next 2 or 3 years, because you're not building just for now. You want to build for you want to build for at least 12 to 18 months or even longer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Totally agree with you, Ankit. Like you mentioned, like when you have the experience and when you are architecting a solution, you will be able to easily identify what can go wrong or what you should not do. That really comes with the experience. And like you mentioned, we always need to handle multiple roles based on the project requirement. I still remember there was one project in which the product owner came to me and told me the requirement as a one-line statement. Basically, the system was existing for 10 years and they wanted to automate the product creation to Salesforce. That was the single line of requirement I got. It was a 1-year project actually with from that single line of statement. And we were we were handling like the product owner role, the development role, architect role. Even we were working as the product owner for the external systems. So it was like, I couldn't even imagine that I had to handle that many roles as part of a particular project. But those are like good learning experience for us. And we are not sure like in each of the project, what are things you might need to do or you need to handle. That was really good to know, Ankit. And I would like to hear from Allison also, because I understand like, you work more in the pre-sales process and all, like, so you are coming up with lots of experience interacting with different people, understanding their requirements. So it is going to give us a different perspective of like how, what about the responsibilities of an architect. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it's a unique thing being an architect in a pre-sales role, meaning that before they've actually said, yeah, I want Salesforce and I want these particular licenses, that in an enterprise architect role, we also have a technical architect role, by the way. That's more the how. I want to be able to do this thing. How does it work? More technically, kind of drilling deep. Enterprise architecture is a little bit different in the sense that there's a lot more focus on the business architecture, meaning what are the capabilities? I need to do lead generation. I need to do commerce self-service. I need to do, call center optimization, those kinds of things, so that you're really understanding before you turn to the salesperson or the account executive at Salesforce and saying, hey, these are all the things I need, is you're really trying to understand the business architecture landscape and document it and do it in a light enough way. You don't have, months or any more time than that. You have weeks to try and get a lay of the land. And we, like I said, we have a methodology for kind of workshopping that out. And when you understand the business architecture, then you can start to drill in on what's the technical architecture landscape. So it's not isolated to just Salesforce by any means. It's saying, where does Salesforce fit either currently or could fit in the future, given all the other applications, Excel spreadsheets, ERPs, all those kinds of soup of applications that the business is using, so that you can kind of map that out. Absolutely map that out for the customer, create a roadmap, create a business value assumption. And we thankfully at Salesforce, we have business value services team who help really kind of drill into that and make that business case. But having come from a solution architect role with a consultant and doing a lot of things that Ankit referred to as really kind of laying out that big picture and mentoring and really kind of being the shepherd to make those things happen. I looked at the enterprise architect role as one where if I were the solution architect or the developer or the admin at that organization, I would want to make sure that we laid things out properly so that we're not biting off more than we can chew, which happens, and that we understand all the integrations and all the other dependencies as we start to bring in Salesforce. And prepare the customer for the change that they're going through, so that when they do make the purchase, they're set up for success. I have to say, as a consultant and a solution architect, there were a number of times that I would come into a project and things were, what got sold to them was way bigger and not feasible and hadn't been thought through as far as how are we going to actually implement, and are these actually the right fit, and have we done all that kind of homework, so to speak, before we got to that point. So as an enterprise architect, I think that's a unique role, especially I work within the commercial segment, which is between small, medium business and enterprise level. So those SMBs, I work in that mid-size level. So a lot of organizations do not have an enterprise architect. Ideally, when you see an enterprise architect at an organization, they are constantly working with the leaders of the organization to understand strategically where they're headed, and laying out how all those systems are supporting where the business or organization wants to go. But enterprise architects are fairly rare out in the world. So especially for medium-sized companies, I help fill that role to help bring that more holistic view of how this is going to fit into the big picture, and then how we are actually going to be able to execute on it. I love the opportunity to not just kind of build, continually exercising those technical muscles, but also the business architecture muscles, which I think that's something that enterprise architects do more so than any other kind of architect.
That's really good to know, Allison, because it's really, like you mentioned, it's really key to understand the bigger picture, and it's a key decision making to understand, like, if Salesforce is going to be the right fit there. Because I remember I was part of at least 2 or 3 projects where we started with Salesforce, and after 1 year, probably we realized, like, no, this is not the right fit. Probably Salesforce itself is not the right fit, or the product that we are using is not right fit. So, like, this should be basically like we should be able to diagnose this even before getting started. So that's a very key role that you are playing, and it's really good to know, like, what all things you do as part of that particular role. Now I would like to go to the second part of the previous question that I asked, like, what are the skills you need to develop to reach this role from a developer a point of view. Like, we are getting this question very frequently: how I can become an architect, or what are the skills that I need to develop to become this to get into an architect role. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that, Allison.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll talk very specifically to enterprise architects. Enterprise architects absolutely need to have the technical skills. And so coming from a developer role and transitioning into, say, an enterprise architect, it's really important to have certainly a good admin understand the platform, understand what should be in code and what should not be in code. And that's not necessarily a black and white question. It's a very shades of gray kind of question. So having those kind of like platform, larger picture skill sets are important, but also from a technical architecture, in enterprise architecture, not just technical skills around Salesforce, but technical skills in the larger world. And certainly, like, the system architect certification helps, talk about integration and identity and all those kinds of things that aren't just necessarily Salesforce specific. Those things, exist out in the larger technical world. And then on the business architecture side, really understanding how the organization works, how it does business. And that goes for nonprofits as well as commercial companies, understanding how the work is done and how those things connect up, and being able to lay out business process and capabilities and those kinds of things. And I think that business architecture one is harder to come by as a developer, especially if you're in a large organization where you maybe are more focused on developing and getting that chance to really interact with the larger organization and understand how things do run and connect, doing things like what we call ride-alongs, which is really just sitting next to somebody as they do their day-to-day to understand how the work gets done. Those kinds of skill sets are definitely helpful as you're moving from a developer to an architect role.
And also, you might need to interact with people from different background. Probably sometimes you will be interacting with people from technical background. Sometimes they might be coming from pure business background. So what kind of skills you need to have to handle this different type of people actually?
Actually, Meera, that's hugely insightful. I think it's super important to be comfortable speaking in front of folks and know how to adjust to your audience. So if you're talking to a technical audience and explaining the larger picture or what you need to have happen, being able to put it in their language. Same thing as you're talking to a CEO or a COO or a CFO, making sure you're putting things in terms that they understand, usually relating around to business value or efficiency or business gains like that, rather than getting into the technical weeds, because they will tune out if you're not talking their language.
Totally agree, Allison. So yeah, Ankit, I would like to hear from you on the skills required for an architect, and how do you think other than developing the skills through experience, what are other different ways probably you can try to improve your skills?
So first and foremost, I would again reiterate and say this point: if you want to be an architect, you need at least 5 to 7 years of experience in sales. So please don't rush for it. That you come into this and you're like, I want to reach that highest level and I want to make the most amount of money. That's not what it's supposed to be. Like, sure, you can go ahead and do the certifications, nobody's going to stop you from doing that, but basically you need to gain that experience. And again, so you need at least 5 years to be to be at that architect level, which I think is pretty much fair. I think everybody would agree 7 is good, but 5 is also fine. Comm skills, because as Allison said, you need to have great communication skills. Now, I'm talking from an architect point of view in a company, in a consulting way, or in an ISV. Like, you're there in the market, you're working for an end customer as a freelancer, as a full-time employee, as a resource through a consulting firm, right? In this way, comm skills, like, you need to be able to, as Allison said, speak to the stakeholders. Like, I have spoken to CEOs, CFOs, head of operations, mostly head of operations, and then also to be able to speak to developers, analysts, consultants. So you need to be able to understand the business requirement and have that business talk with the stakeholders, and then you need to be able to translate that to your team. So communication skills are the most important one. I just today saw something on LinkedIn. I've not been active recently, but there was this post from Gaurav Sood regarding charting and diagramming. Very important. We as humans understand diagrams 1,000 times faster than reading lines and lines of text. So being an architect, I personally was like, I was going to say shit, but I was like, I need to go and practice that more because I've not been diagramming more. So diagramming is also a big part of that. Like, you need to be able to diagram and create you need to be able to create diagram and express the thoughts in a diagrammatic way to the system. Now, a lot of people may say that I don't get the opportunity at my company. I've been working as a developer for 5 years, for 7 years, but I'm still a developer. I don't get the opportunity to showcase that. Here's the thing. It's a very simple solution. You have free developer orgs. So whatever client you're working on, or just take any effing hypothetical situation, get a developer org and create a whole scenario out of it. Let's take an airline. Let's take any airline, Lufthansa, for example. Create a demo, take a developer org, create the whole business architecture. Okay, what does it look like? We have passengers, we have flights, we have how do you call it? Not luggage, the other part of luggage. Freight. So you have freight and you have everything. So create a business unit for all of that, create a full use case from a business point of view, and think like you're talking to a CEO or a head of sales. Then make that whole scenario out in a demo org, write a blog about it, go to Salesforce Ben, he will be happy to publish that story, and then write it out and show it to the world, or go to a conference, go to a dreaming event, talk about it. So all these people saying that I'm not getting a chance at my company because I there's somebody already there. You have to take that chance. And for that, you just need to create a scenario, and it doesn't cost a penny. All it costs is your time, right? So if you're thinking, okay, how do I get in those talks? If, let's say, you're not getting into those meetings where you need to create your own scenario, create your own customer, write to friends, come to these sessions, ask. I think there are, I don't know, if not tens, there are hundreds of this review board scenarios which are out there. Just go ahead and play with them. Open a demo or create everything. not that hard. And that's how you will become an architect, because you'll be like, okay, what will an architect do right now? And then give that job to a developer, then put the developer hat on and do that. And then you will realize, oh, how was the communication between them? So the skills are required is experience and I mean, experience is not a skill, but basically communication skills will be one. And also know your thing. Like I know Salesforce like back of my hand. This is how, because I'm now in this for 12, 15 years now. So I know this at back of my hand. I wouldn't call myself expert because there's always something to learn, but know the thing that you are claiming to be. So know Salesforce, do practice scenarios if you're not getting the chance. And that's how you can also show to your leadership that, hey, look at me, I'm ready for this step. Can you give me that step or not? Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would. Oh, sorry, Meera. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say I love that of you may have heard of something called like an elevator pitch. It's really just boiling down what it is. Entrepreneurs use it to kind of pitch what they want to do and be prepared to talk about it. Practicing an elevator pitch or something akin to that to really talk about what you're doing, where it's going, and be able to put it in terms that are very relatable to the average person is great practice, because it does take practice. It's not like, I think Ankit's right as far as getting deep into experience is really going to help you in that architect path. But that practicing of it, because you're not going to be perfect at it the first time you try, but don't shy away from making a presentation or taking to coffee, somebody taking out someone to coffee that might be in another part of your organization, just to really, out of curiosity, learn what they are and to help articulate what you're doing. Those kinds of things can help you nurture those communication skills. So there's just lots of ways, and you could be real creative with that. But the more you kind of get out and kind of exercise those muscles, you'll find that experience really picks up and will support your architecture.
Just to add to that, from my personal experience, like I was a developer for the first 2.5 years, and I was also interacting, and this is back in 2012. So I'm talking now about 2014, end of 2014, 2015. That's where I made the switch to consultant first. So it's not like you go from developer directly to an architect. The next step should be consulting, where you start talking, where you have to practice those comm skills. And if you combine that dev and consultant, then you kind of have that architect ready for you. So don't just like there's a step to it. So don't just think, okay, from developer I'm just now going to jump to being an architect. No, from a developer, try getting into a consulting role where you talk to the clients from different stakeholders, and that will help you brush your communication skills. And just from personal experience, I was a developer for 2.5 years, and I was doing stakeholder stuff and everything, but I was not getting the chance that I should have got. At some point I was like, okay, I need to grow a pair and do it myself. And I quit my job and I started doing it. Later during the years, I asked my boss, why were you not giving me the chance? And now we are friends, and he was like, well, you were a very good resource. Like if I lost you, then I lost a developer, and it's very hard to replace you. So you also have to see, why are you not getting the chance? Is it something that you're so good at your job that if you lose, like if they move you, then they have to find something. If that part is happening, try to find someone next to you in your organization whom you can train to take your space, so that they see that you're showing those leadership skills and move up. Because sometimes you can be so invaluable as a developer, where you are absolutely good and you know the org, that they don't want you to move up, because then it will take two people to do the job that you were doing. So if you come in that situation, I said to my boss, hey, well, why don't you think if we hired someone and I could train them so I could move the next level? And he was like, in hindsight, yeah, but I didn't want you to go. So you learn.
Yeah, totally agree, Agit. I think for me, there was at least two moments where I realized like there are so many things to learn, because based on my experience, I was thinking like, I know many things. But one moment that I realized there are so many things to learn was like when I started to involve in pre-sales. Then I realized there are so many things to learn. There are so many features available in Salesforce that I don't know. The second moment, like you mentioned, when I started to practice the scenarios available for CTA, like it was a great journey actually when I started to solve scenarios, and then when I started to interact with people like Lilith, Georgi, who has got lots of experience in this. I realized, like, and we have got a study group. So when we are like, you might not be getting a chance to explore everything, but when you are studying as a group, each person is coming from different experience level. So when you are sharing those experience, really we are getting a chance to improve our knowledge. And also along with that, like you all mentioned, like, in addition to understanding the capability of the platform, it's equally or more important to understand the limitations of the platform before you are making a particular decision or a design, basically a design decision. That's what I felt. So maybe I guess, we might be yeah we might be already reaching almost 1 hour now. I didn't even realize that. I think I will be able to talk to you people for hours, but we would like to take some questions from the audience also. Before that, any last thing that you would like to share, Allison or Ankit? Okay, all good. Lilith, would you like to help with questions? Like, is there any specific questions that
Yeah, sure.
from yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna start from the most recent and move my way up, but please feel free to add any in the chat if you have more. There's a question from Orlando from Portugal, who is trying to see how he can participate in groups like these more actively. And I think it's like we mentioned before, best way to learn is to practice in person or interactively is really nice. So what do you think is the best way to go?
Yeah, I think the community, I think we talked about it a little bit in chat, but we've got such a diverse community, even just like within this virtual room here all over the world. So kind of no matter where you are, there's definitely an opportunity to get involved in the Trailblazer community to start with, but then also the architects Ohana. There's also an Ohana Slack group as well that is, larger than focused on architecture. So there's a lot of opportunity, no matter where you are, to find that virtual opportunity. But I do encourage folks to find in person. And if you're, kind of thirsty for that, yeah, reaching out virtually, you might find some folks that are in your area and start an architect group. That's another way to do it. You don't have to be an architect to have an architect group. It's really that topic and learning together.
Yeah. Again, I think Allison covered it best. Just join the local architect group. If you are in Portugal, I think Hugo Rosario is based over there. I pretty much know names of European people. Yeah, Hugo is based in Portugal, so you can check him. Oh no, he's based in the French Riviera. I know somebody is based in Portugal. Just go to the Trailblazer group and search, and I'm forgetting the name, but there's a group for everyone in every city. Yeah, you should be able to find some people. Or invite me. I'm happy to come to Lisbon in winters.
And I think maybe this is also a good shout out, Orlando. We will be posting this recording once it's done on YouTube, but also, of course, we'll create some visibility on LinkedIn. Feel free to ask there again. And then anyone who can think of or remember the name of a brilliant architect in Portugal, they can link them, they can tag them, and you'll get swamped with, architect buddies.
Yeah. Yeah, I just need to go to LinkedIn and figure it out. I've met that person at a dreaming event. I have the face. I'm forgetting the name.
No worries. It will come to you when we post it. But another question, again from Orlando. He was really on a roll. He asked whether it is possible to become an architect in a big corporation or consulting company, or is it realistic to be an architect as a solo Salesforce person? And maybe Ankit, you already put it in the chat, but do you want to repeat a bit your advice?
Yeah, so I think going solo is like first start in a corporation. I started as a freelance developer, so I just went on that role since 2015. Like went on the role since 2015 and somehow started doing more consulting and somehow started developer. I think it's easier to become in a big organization. I already laid out kind of a bunch of steps for you, like, you know, make a scenario, train the next person, like figure out why you're not getting there, and then, you know, work your way upwards. It's easier. I think the easiest and the most best way to do is through a consulting company, because then you're exposed to many projects, not just the projects that you're working on, but the projects that your colleagues are working on, because, you know, those, somebody mentioned those coffee machine talks are underrated. I think so too, because you discuss problems and everything. So being one at a consulting company is easier. Again, but then consulting is running. I don't know, as Lilith, how is working at a consulting company? I think it's a lot of travel. It's fun. It depends where you are in the hierarchy. At a big corporation, again, it can be challenging, because if there are already 2 or 3 architects and they're settled in their position and they are not moving, then how do we make place for you? So it can be challenging in those terms. But it doesn't mean that you cannot try, and doesn't mean that, you know, you cannot switch. Let's just be honest, we are not affiliated with any company. So that as a solopreneur, yes, you can be an architect, but before being an architect, you need to create a brand. Like being a solopreneur, you need to build a business around it. You need to, like, people need to know you, people need to be aware about you. So there's not just becoming an architect, there's a lot of marketing aspect to involve too. Like, for example, me, I go to dreaming events, I'm doing this right now, and all of that. And this is a billable hour. I can choose to work for a client and charge money, but you know, it's not my main priority. So being a solopreneur as an architect is also possible, but then you need to spend money, like you need to spend time on you know, your branding. Like, why should they choose you and not someone else? What is that you have? You need to show your skills, you know. So both has its pros and cons. Like, I don't have a boss, but in a way your client is your boss, you know. So it doesn't, so it's a very big myth. Oh, I'm a freelancer, but yeah, your client is your boss. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
I think that's already some great advice. I don't know, Allison, if you want to add something to this, or Meera.
All good
No.
advice. I agree.
Yeah.
Plus one hard.
Well, I mean, you did it, Ankit. You answered it so well. Nothing to add, and that's good, because we have some more questions coming up. So I'm gonna immediately go to another question that is actually particularly targeted towards Ankit, to get some more information about groups in Berlin. Are you gonna answer that one in the chat?
Oh, I didn't see that, but yeah, so groups in Berlin. I was traveling for personal reasons, and I'm back in Berlin. The next meeting is happening on 25th of October, and the location I will release soon. But who is that from Berlin? Because I pretty much know everybody from Berlin. But yes.
Chandan. I hope I'm
Okay.
pronouncing that right.
Chandan, right? Yeah. So the next event is happening most probably on 25th of October. And we just took kind of like a summer break. So we have like an admin developer and architect group in Berlin, and it's basically the same clique of people that are meeting. So we do one each month, but we took kind of like a summer break, because it's also good to go outside and enjoy some sun. So yeah, the next one would happen on 25th of October. I cannot confirm the location right now, but yeah, I'll do that.
So best thing people can do is just follow you on LinkedIn, and then they'll keep on, you know, getting all the goodies.
Yeah, and also the Berlin Trailblazer architect group. That's even the better place. Yeah.
Perfect. So clear call to action, Chandan. Go and follow that group, or follow Ankit, or do both. You know. We also have another question from Yashika, who is asking, what is the best way to find people and start a study group for CTA?
I'll jump in on that one. I think we had a link to join the architect Ohana further up.
Yeah, it's in the chat. Yeah.
Yep. So that is, I think, the best way to find people, because many of those folks are pursuing their CTA, and there's many folks in there who already have their CTA. That's a great place to connect. And, you know, I think there's some channels too for very specific things that you're studying, and forming a cohort. So I think that's probably the very best way.
I agree. I don't know, Meera, you have some other advice maybe?
Yeah, I also agree with that because I also got started through that Slack channel. Then, like, there are so many groups who will be promoting like CTA aspirants, and you can look around and probably like Lilith has shared one link which has some of the details. So look for those groups, and you will be able to get your study partner from there. That's how we also expanded our group actually, because we got started with just 2 people, me and one of my friend actually. Then slowly the people whom we are reaching out for judging us, like people like Lilith, and there are so many CTAs around who will be there to help us. Even through their connections also we usually get other study buddies, and that's how we usually expand our group.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So definitely it helped me so much to be in that group. And you see, I got there. So let's say it's a gratification, or I don't know, like a validation of the group's importance. And indeed, it's like Meera said, yeah, I have people that I'm doing mocks for. If I see that they're more or less at the same level as Meera, I might send them check Meera out, or I tell it the other way around. It's all about connections there. All right. Next question is from Mahendra. How should an architect consider his solutions, or take into his solutions those future trends and challenges that a business is going to face in a few years, like the European D Act, the European GDPR, migration to S4, or especially sustainability, CO2 taxes, etc. How do we take those technology and market trends into account?
Migration to S4, do you mean Amazon S4 or S4 HANA SAP, Mahindran?
S4 HANA.
Okay.
S4 HANA, there are a lot of people struggling in this migrations.
Do you mean
because
customers migrating from Salesforce to SAP?
No, it is that is also a business case, because customers are but not so clear. They are insecure, not only from SAP, also from other ERP services, because of several German or EU laws are going to come, especially EU Data Act is coming from, it's going to be in 2024, it is going to come. For that one, there are a lot of issues, how they are going to do this migration. Even in the EU, GDPR is not yet completely implemented in projects, but again, the next act is coming. How these challenges are going to be considered in architecture level. I'm also in Hamburg, working as a freelance for SAP migrations. So I thought how you would face such challenges.
So that's a very good question. As I just taken the opportunity from my side to answer, because I actually never thought about it, and I actually think when I'm working inside Salesforce, this is one of the headaches that Salesforce takes away, where you don't have to deal with that. Like, I don't need to deal where my database is or how am I going to start my database. I just go click the fields and I have it. I don't need to write a compiler for Apex. It's written for me over there. I don't have to care what's running in the back of LWC. So all these EU Data Act or GDPR Act, which when they will come, is basically, I think, if it needs to be at the system level, that Salesforce will take care of it, or whichever system is there, it's going to take care of it. Or B, it's basically money for the consulting companies, because now it's like, let's have a project, let's do something about it. And as an architect, when I am thinking, and let's say I'm working for an in-house customer, how I foresee future is, will this be feature useful in the next 2 to 3 years? Will this be required in the next 2 to 3 years? I'm not thinking such deep about like sustainability taxes and all of that. Like, let's say if sustainability taxes are coming just out of the blue, out of my head, and I'm like, we need to charge customers for that. I would just create like a new function or a flow where every time we are making a sale through the community cloud, the CO2 tax is added, and that's about it. My problem is done. If it's EU GDPR, I would add like a checkbox or an email and send it to every customer and be like, hey, this is the new EU law. Do you want it to be checked or not? I mean, for real, I don't want to use the word, but with the new cookies, with the new GDPR, did it help anyone? Like I'm trying not to always click allow all cookies, but every place you go, it's like now previously I had okay, cancel, and now I have like, oh, okay, don't allow cookies, go inside, save my preferences, and then come outside. Like as a consumer, it has become a bigger pain in the butt for me than it was before. So as an architect, I'm basically thinking more about technical stuff. And for business and these part of thing, if you are at a big organization, there's usually a legal department who's taking care of this stuff. And then they can come to you and be like, hey, we need to protect our customers' data. What do you think we should do? You know, that's how I think this conversation will go.
Yeah. But the problem is this how it worked in the last few decades. Now companies are struggling in migration to cloud. I'm a cloud solutions engineer as well. We have a company and they have a lot of SAP systems. All these programs, all the data are raw coded completely, everything. At those times, not even GDPR or German BSD was not there. They have coded freely, and now the problem is to go to cloud. They are struggling because all the sensitive data are there. And the company is having if they go to cloud without considering all these sensible data, they are having trouble. Here in German, they call fines, Bußgelder. So the company is the company is having this Bußgelder for millions of euros, and they do not know which way they have to go. And experts, architects.
Connect me to them. I'll make it for 900,000. They would not speak to say millions. I promise you that. Connect me to them, and you can have.
It's more than 30 million euros. Bußgelder fines. Yeah.
Let's make it down. No, I know this problem because my previous client was also like in healthcare system, and they also were moving to Salesforce from SAP, so they had the problem. But we solved the problem. Like there were duplicates. Like they had only 4,000 paying customers, but if you look at their accounts, they had like 150,000 accounts, but they only had 4,000 paying customers. That there was so much mule or dirt, as we call it. So I think it's more of a structure problem, but moving to cloud just because of these things should not be a problem. But we can definitely take it offline. I'm also in Hamburg at the end of November. I'm also happy to meet you if you want.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we can. Yeah. We can exchange our emails.
Just
thank you.
To get Allison's opinion on this, because I think, there's definitely some opinion there too.
You are correct, Lilith. This is exactly why we do enterprise architecture, because when we're thinking about change is constant in, and maybe even speeding up in this world, and ERPs are designed to be the system of record. And many times we put in customizations, and it's not just SAP, it's not just in Germany, it's a global thing. I'm fairly certain of it. And thinking about, as an architect, where do I manage this, and how do all the systems, if you're familiar with like layered systems, system of record, and then system of engagement, which is usually where Salesforce is making sure if there are customizations in the wrong place, like I may not deal with GDPR in SAP directly. I may deal with that in Salesforce because that's the system of engagement that needs to and is good at handling that, versus a system of record is usually good at handling orders and then fulfilling them and all that information surrounding it and the accounting in the background, which all these things we need. As an architect, recognizing whatever was done in the past, we have to have kind of a roadmap going forward to understand where should this customization belong and how do we, kind of manage that going forward. But if it helps at all, you're not alone in that pain. And I think that kind of architecture planning is critical. And then the hard work begins in the actual technical architecture, like Ankit was talking about, of really getting in there and figuring out how to make that happen. Hopefully that was helpful.
I couldn't agree more. No, I think it definitely was. Meera, I don't know if you had something you wanted to add on this one.
No, I agree with what Ankita and Allison was mentioning, and especially when you are migrating from some legacy system to Salesforce. Like Salesforce has lots of features to handle many of the challenges, and it's equally important to understand Salesforce roadmap also. And in addition to that, like when you are planning to migrate something from legacy system to Salesforce, we have seen people like, migrating calculations to say, so maybe something like, daily, if they might need to process millions of data to do some kind of calculation, and if they are expecting that to be done in Salesforce, sometimes that not work. So it is equally important to understand, like, what is feasible with the Salesforce platform capabilities. Like Allison mentioned, what all things needs to be processed outside of Salesforce and what should happen within Salesforce. That's very important to understand.
Yeah, and I think there's so many interesting insights that have been given. And to maybe kind of try and summarize it, yes, of course, it's important to look ahead. But like Ankit also mentioned, you're not the expert of everything, right? I mean, you're not a lawyer. So it is important to know who you can count on and bring the right people for certain conversations. Of course, it's good to be aware and good to know that there might be an architecture impact, but it doesn't mean that you have to be the single person on top of this. I think we are out of questions for now. So unless anybody wants to put anything quickly in the chat, it's back to you, Meera.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lilith, for taking the questions. So we will be publishing this session in our YouTube channel. I am just sharing, we will be publishing the recording in our YouTube channel. I can share the link later, or LinkedIn post from me or Lilith to find out the details. And all our past sessions are also available as part of our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. I hope this was interesting and helpful. Thank you so much, Allison and Ankit, to be part of our today's discussion. It was really nice to have both of you as part of today's discussion.
Thank you, Meera, and thank you, Lilith.
Yeah, likewise. I've seen a lot of SAIMA sessions just as a viewer and also with Johan and Gaurav. So thank you both and all the whole team of SAIMA, Henok, for organizing this. It's a team effort. So thank you everyone for taking time. I know everybody has jobs, life, whatever. Meera, I don't know where you are. It looks like it's night over there. So thank you for making the effort. And if anyone has any questions regarding anything, just hit me up on LinkedIn. I promise to be more active now. Cheers.
We will take you up on that. So I will close the call. Thanks everyone for joining, and we hope to see you on the next one, which is next week. So see you there.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.